Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the world. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your midday market report for Friday, June 3rd. Our weekly trip to PA in the house. We debuted last Friday, myself and the expert guru himself, Mr. Dan Alexander, talking NCAAs and some Premier Lacrosse League, which kicks off tomorrow and Sunday. So, what better way to get ourselves ready for the weekend action and some winning plays as always, the one and only Mr. Dan Alexander.
What's going on, Jeff? Good to be back with you, man. It's kicked it off last week. A little bit rough in NCAA action, but the PLL is really where I quote unquote specialize in. This is the league that I love. I think it's the best lacrosse product. So happy to be back here with you, and I can't believe it's opening week already.
Me either. I'm going to take a step back just for Maryland, undefeated season, absolute wagons. Hats off. And in our lanes, obviously, it was kind of comical. Win 2 games, don't cover either, and both games go under. Bring us back to the weekend and all 2 games, and then the championship.
Yeah, I thought that Rutgers team was going to come with a little bit more gusto. I kind of liked them. It was a lean them against Cornell. Rutgers never really even had a shot in that game. Cornell was just looking like a team possessed, showing, we talked about how the Ivy League was really the class of NCAA lacrosse this year. Cornell, they were a team that kind of went under the radar, and then they make a run here in the championship, and then they gave Maryland pretty much all they could handle. It was both of those last 2 games were 2 of the very few games that Maryland did not cover against the spread. So we talked about what an absolute beast they were, but you did see some fatigue as it kind of went on. A lot of heat over the weekend as well, some weather that they were dealing with. So, Maryland, it was a tough weekend to handicap because, when you have a game that takes place on Saturday and then you're trying to get it ready to go for Monday, it's just a different situation. So numbers that maybe you're looking at throughout the year aren't as sanctimount as they might be if you did have a week to prepare or whatever. So I'm just glad to kind of turn the page. But hats off to Maryland, like you said it best, an absolute wagon, like scratches the surface. What an incredible program that was. They were just rolling teams, and sure, I think maybe I should have given Cornell a little bit more credit because, they gave Maryland, they were 6.5 point underdogs. The game ends up being a 2-score margin for Maryland. And it was largely due in part to a major comeback towards the end of the game out of that Cornell side. So great action. And it was also the first entire season that we've had betting NCAA lacrosse. It was the first time that they had lines up all year long. So hopefully that's becoming the norm. And I think, just from looking on Twitter, talking to people, talking to yourself, having this sports betting space transition people into becoming lacrosse fans is just going to really help this sport grow exponentially, which is why, I love doing shows like this. I love talking about it because it's a sport that I love. If we can get 1, 2, 3 different people interested in betting it, watching it, tracking it, that's just going to help grow the sport exponentially.
I have to be 100% honest with you. I had Maryland on for the whole week, and I had them on Saturday. I had them on Monday. And hats off to you. You talked about weather on Saturday. That game was delayed due to lightning. So if you ever want to get out of the lacrosse end, meteorology might be right up your alley as well.
Not a bad, but the only problem is I'm able to call the storms. As far as building them into my handicap didn't help me much because I loved the under in that Rutgers game. Every single number told you that 24.5 in Rutgers Cornell is a great play going under that. And then the storm happens, and then it was a 3.5 hour delay, Jeff, before they got back on the field. So at that point, throw your handicaps out the window because it's a brand new game at that point. It was an entire half, and the scoring in that half was nearly trending towards tripling. So killed me on my under. I knew when the delay happened, I was like, I'm not feeling good about this under anymore because, you get off your feet. The guys are in the locker room, thinking about the game and getting pumped up. And then so much of keeping games under in games like hockey and in lacrosse, and even soccer, for what it's worth, are so contingent on the psyche of the goaltenders. So you throw a goaltender into an ice box for 3.5 hours. I wasn't feeling too good about the under, and maybe I should have bet on some live over while they were in delay. But what are you going to do? You live and you learn, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. We are here. We have 2 games on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. This is our second year now, you and I together. We're trying to promote, build fans, fannies in the sea, eyes in the skies, streaming, live TV, whatever it takes. DraftKings is helping us with odds, props, futures. So to the novice, as we get ready for opening day, opening weekend, fill them in a little back history, what to expect for this year, and maybe before we break down the games for Saturday and Sunday, maybe a potential, future that you could see with a little meat on the bone right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get people some actionable info before we get out of here, Jeff. But really, I think the main thing is if there are people who are transitioning from betting the NCAA, rolling into the PLL action here, there are some major rule differences that you should probably be aware of. I think first and foremost, you're going to look at some of these totals and you'll say, man, that's lower. That's different than what we were seeing in field lacrosse for the NCAA. Reason being, it's 48-minute games versus 60-minute games. So you would think in the pros, the game's going to be longer, this, that, and the other thing. In the PLL, they really stress a fast pace, quick restarts, all of that. So the games in the PLL are significantly shorter than in NCAA action. So in NCAA, 60-minute games with 15-minute quarters, you're looking at 12-minute quarters here in the PLL. So that's one of the biggest differences, and your handicapping of totals, of player props has to completely change because you're working with a much shorter amount of time there. So I think that's one of the big differences. And the other goes into handicapping goal totals and point totals and just totals as a whole. And that's that there's a 2-point arc, kind of like the 3-point arc in basketball. In the pros, you can get some long bombs going. So a team who's getting 2.5 goals was a really profitable endeavor for us last year, Jeff, because of that 2-point shot, because of that quick clock. No one's really truly ever out of it. And the firepower that's in this league is just to another level, just the nth degree of firepower that you see out of these guys. So those are probably the 2 main differences going into it. And we talked about it kind of last week, just when you're looking at lines, it's very similar to how a hockey game is lined. So your favorite's going to be -1.5 on the puck line, the ball line. That's the spread in lacrosse. And we have yet to see a 3.5 in the PLL. And with the parity, I expect it to be at an all-time high this year, Jeff. I would be surprised if we saw many 2.5s, but we do have one this weekend.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the board. We got a 2.15 and a 5 on Saturday and a 1 and 3.45 on Sunday. I just wanted to say I brought up the 2.5 last week because I knew that was a very profitable for us last year. And your words to me, I was like, well, I see one now at 2.5. It was juiced to -135. You talked about guys sitting out or not being with the teams because of the other leagues going on. And you were, again, spot on. You're like, well, let's sit and hold back. It hasn't moved. So, again, hats off to you. You're the expert. And I follow your lead when it comes to this. So already in mid-season form, sir.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's why, when people ask me, how do you handicap, how do you break down the PLL, what I do, and what you and I have gone back and forth, because you're the same kind of handicapper in me, in the aspect that we'll handicap partly in what the teams are, what the players are. But it's all about the numbers. It's all about getting the right numbers and using those numbers to your advantage. And that 2.5 is one of the best numbers. Last year, there were only 8 different instances in the entire season that there were 2.5 lines where a team was favored by 2.5 goals. In those instances, the underdog covered in 6 of them. So, it was almost, you see the 2.5. I never suggest anybody to really bet anything blindly, but that was, hey, I'm seeing 2.5. Let me just take that. And this week, I'll kind of start with that game there because it's the Chrome and the Archers. That's going to be your final game of the weekend. So you got time on this one. I don't expect the line to move too much. And reason being, Archers, they can blow people out. I mean, their offensive firepower is unreal. However, here in week one, they're going to be without one of their best offensive players. He had a camp injury. So Grant Ament, one of their best attackmen, he's a terrific finisher, with the ball in his stick, but he's also a great facilitator too. So a team that routinely is going over, a lot of that has to do with the connection of their midfielder, Tom Schreiber, and his connection, almost unspoken. They're of the same mind with Grant Ament. No Ament. And I also think this Chrome team is a little bit, for lack of a better term, pissed off about how last year ended. I mean, they ended up as the last seed. They had a bunch of veterans now retire, so it's a major youth injection. I think that youth injection is really going to serve them nicely. And we talk about what a great team Maryland was. Huge reason they were so great was because of Logan Wisnauskas. He was one of the best players in NCAA all season long, midfielder and attackman from Maryland. He was the first overall pick in the draft to the Chrome. So he's going to join a guy in Dylan Malloy who kind of has a chip on his shoulder. This whole Chrome team, I think, is going to just play angry all year long. And if you're telling me week one, when people have limited chemistry together, you have a team that got bit by the injury bug a little bit in the Archers, and you're giving me 2.5 goals. It's a little juicy, -135, but I think when more people get to be betting this game, they're going to be hearing the Grant Ament news all weekend long on every other game. They're probably going to talk about it on the broadcast. So I think a lot of people are probably going to be backing this Chrome side. So if you want that 2.5 at, little to no juice, 135, I try and stay below 140. I don't really like laying juice. Some people don't mind. I think you want to grab that 2.5 as soon as you can, because even on some other books, it's already trending towards that 140. So if you want to stay away from the juice, take that 2.5. I also am not going to try and talk you out of taking Chrome on the money line. I think they're live to win the game. And in those situations last year when they were 2.5-point underdogs, one of them they won outright. And when they played against the Archers last year, it was an 8-7 game. After the Archers were going over like crazy, this team was the one who stifled them a little bit. And that was when Grant Ament was playing. So, kind of putting the cart before the horse there a little bit, Jeff, going with the last game and giving you one of my favorite plays right out of the gate. But we don't go scripted here on ECSI, baby. You never know when the gold's going to get dropped on you. So I like that 2.5. Also have a write-up on that on wagertalk.com. Some other reasons why I'm liking it.
The total on that game now, 23.5. And I'm looking at all four games now. There's a 24.5, a 22.5, 24.5, and obviously a 23.5. Just doing basic math. I mean, both teams going to sneak into the double digits, 12-10, 12-11, 13-11, 13-12. In this game that we just talked about, a 23 and a hook. I mean, does that seem right around the number?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I think it might be a tick high. I honestly, just as rule of thumb, think about what we see in the NFL, what we see in the NBA. Other professional leagues can be a great indicator on how leagues will start. They're completely different sports, but the kind of handicapping axioms are the same. And that's the first couple weeks of so many of these professional leagues, because of the limited reps the guys get leading up to it. All these teams showed up for a week of camp. I think naturally seasons just start towards unders. You know what I mean? It's almost like a quasi preseason that you're starting the year off with. So really on all of these games, I lean under, even with the lower totals that you're looking, just because I think, there's some chemistry things that have to come along. And also you're not in mid-season shape. We might be in mid-season form here on our shows, Jeff, but I'm not sure if the players are quite up to that snuff. Not saying they're showing up to camp, out overweight and out of shape, but there is something to getting up to a game speed. You can't replicate that in a scrimmage. You can't replicate that in a game or in a practice, So I genuinely lean unders. But also in week ones, Jeff, I never really want to be going crazy and have a giant, 10 bet card just because all that your indicators that you have are last season, and there's different personnel changes. There was just a draft. There's different members on staff. So you have maybe some different philosophies defensively, offensively. So week one always for me is going to be a learning opportunity. But that being said, we are sports bettors. You got to have some action, whether it's week one or not, Jeff. And that's what we're here for, man.
Saturday, 2:15, the Redwoods versus the Atlas. Currently, money line Atlas minus 135. You can grab the Redwoods at plus 105. Spreads, Redwoods plus 1.5 minus 135. Atlas minus a goal and a half plus 105. You're under over of 24 and a hook.
Yeah, and I love this matchup. Actually, these matchups got flopped. So the times are incorrect on the book. So just it's quiet time. We won't say anything about that. We could potentially see an opportunity where the game that's supposed to be listed on the book at 5 is still up when the game happens. I'm not saying hammer them or make them pay for it or anything. And I know people are listening to the show, so hopefully I didn't say too much. But Redwoods Atlas this is actually going to be the game that is nationally televised. You're not gonna have to scroll through an app to find it. If you have a television, you're going to go to the ESPN, not ESPNU, not ESPN2. This game is on the ESPN to kick off the year. I can't be more pumped for it because it's going to be a great matchup between the Redwoods and Atlas. This is a matchup that you don't really have much history behind. It's only the 5th time these two teams are facing off. The series is split 2-2, so it's a coin flip game. I'm leaning towards the dog in this one, Jeff. Redwoods is a team that I just think they have a lot of good veteran presence. Troutman, their goaltender, a pretty solid netminder, kind of up and down, kind of streaky as goaltenders are. But when he's on, man, he's on. And I think you're seeing Atlas favored in this game simply because what happened in the draft. Before the draft, they were one of the longer odds teams to win the title in the future market. The day after the draft, they became, depending on what book you're looking at, number 1, number 2, number 3 odds on favorite to win this year. So they went from being, rebuild, decent offense, still not really being able to find their footing to this is the team to beat. And while I think they're going to become that as the season continues, I don't know that if in week 1, Jeff Teat, attackman, is going to completely meld with the rookie sensation that everyone's expecting him to be. And Chris Gray, he's out of UNC, a terrific scorer, great facilitator. So their attack unit is going to be great. However, they're facing off against who I feel is the most underrated defense in the league. Redwoods went out. They made some answers as well. They brought in Arden Cohen from Notre Dame, a terrific poll. So they still have Garrett Epple. So they have a lot of strength on strength in this matchup. Plus, they have a lot more veteran presence. Plus, they have a head coach in Nat St. Laurent that shows precedence of winning in week 1. Last year was when they still had teams that potentially had 2 games a weekend. Remember when we talked about potentially fading teams in their second game last year? They're not doing that this year, but last year they had 2 games on opening weekend, and they won them both. So now you're telling me the Redwoods are going to be underdogs in this game in a spot where I think that they're pretty live to win. They're plus 105 on the money line. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line, but I think the better way to attack it is take the 1.5 because this is a Redwoods team that isn't an underdog much. Only underdogs twice last year. They covered both of those games, Jeff. So this is a team that when they're in the underdog role, they step up. I think the Redwoods maybe pull the upset on ESPN live broadcast across the nation, 5 o'clock Eastern. Get to your television sets because it's going to be a war between these two, Jeff.
You brought up the time change. I have to just way back, probably well before you were born. One of our back in the day when you were placing wagers, you would call up a phone number and they would have the lines recorded and the games. And there was a UNC basketball game that had already played. And so that was on the recording. And this is truth. This is hilarious. I was out of college. I knew everything, and I was just running wild. It was bad. And so back then I was a $50 player. I couldn't afford $50, trust me, but I was a $50 player. And I called up, left them my name, my code name, and I put 500 on North Carolina. So of course that's going to sound the bells. Like, hold on, this guy's a $50 player and he's playing 50 on North Carolina, right? So I'm dancing in the streets. I'm going out. I'm going crazy. I got home and my mom and my dad, my mom was in bed and my dad goes, "Hey, by the way, just to let you know, fingers called. And that 500 that you had on North Carolina was voided." And I was like,
you thought you had him. You thought you got him. Well, I love that story. And also, Jeff, man, I wish I would have been rolling with you because you sound like you were one hell of a guy to be hanging out with. Not saying you're not now, but I might like to see you strutting your stuff back then a little bit. But it's funny that you mentioned that because this actually was a situation that happened in the lacrosse market 2 years ago. I think I told you this story before, but it was Duke playing against Holy Cross. Duke was a 9.5-point favorite. They left the lineup into the third quarter, Jeff. When it was a 1-goal game, total in the game was 24.5. There were 9 goals that were scored. I hammered Holy Cross. I hammered the under. I emptied my account on them. And being the good folks that they are at DraftKings, they honored the bet. They paid me out on the bet. So, credit to them. I guess they figured, he'll probably lose plenty once football season will come along. So throw him this lacrosse bone because once he's betting on the Eagles, we'll get all that money back. So I guess maybe that's the way they looked at it.
Exactly. Good customer service, even way back. How's that sound?
Yep. Absolutely, my man.
Okay, so the second game, actually the first game then in the afternoon, Whip Snakes Chaos. Currently moneyline Whip Snakes minus 210, the Chaos at plus 165, the minus a goal and a half for the Whip Snakes, minus 145 juiced, plus the 1.5 for the Chaos, plus 115, and under over of 22 and a hook. So obviously, at least DraftKings in Vegas feel very highly on the Whip Snakes.
Well, and we talked about it last year. This Whips team is unreal. I mean, they are one of the best at retooling. They're almost the quasi Maryland of the professional league. It's funny because this Redwoods team, they have a bunch of players from Notre Dame, so people call them, the Notre Dame club in the PLL. This squad has a bunch of Maryland players there, known as the quasi Terps, the Whip Terps, if you want to call them that. But this is actually a game that I'm not touching. And for the reason, this is a textbook example of the people who try and tell you they know what they're talking about and the people who actually know what they're talking about. Because I see people putting out their free plays now and telling you what a great value that you're getting on the Whip Snakes. Whip Snakes should win the game. Well, guess what? If you were actually paying attention to these markets from the second that they were put out, you could have had the Whip Snakes plus 1.5. You could have had the Whip Snakes minus 110 on the money line, 2 tickets that I have because I knew that this Chaos team had several of their high-level players playing in the NLL, the Indoor Lacrosse League. They play for the Buffalo Bandits. For what it's worth, the Buffalo Bandits game is going to be tomorrow. They're playing the Colorado Mammoth in the NLL Cup, so it's a great time to be a lacrosse fan. You got NLL action, PLL action, but we knew, if you were paying attention, that the NLL Cup was going to spill into the start of the PLL season. So what smart bettors did in these markets, looked at the rosters and was looking at which players overlap, which has a heavy opportunity that a player who is a high impact player in the PLL might not be playing in weeks 1, 2, potentially 3, depending on how long that this NLL Cup goes. It's a 3-game series, 1 game a week is how they end up playing it. So me and my team with Bet on the Cross, we saw there's 10 players on the Chaos roster that also are playing in the NLL. And they're guys like Chris Cloutier, Josh Byrne. I know these names might not mean much to some people, but they're big-time players for this Chaos team. So when this line opened, and it was a WTF line. No, not what you're thinking, Jeff. It was the wrong team favored because even with those horses, I think the Whips were still live in this game. I might end up with egg on my face, but I'm going to have a hell of a lot better ticket having plus 1.5 with the Whip Snakes, only laying minus 110 on the money line where it's already up to 210. So I'll get out my CLV trash can. I'll have our guy Dave Sherapan ready to tweet me with my CLV can. But don't bet this game. There's been too much movement in the market. Yes, the whip should win. Yes, the whip should cover, but you're taking a bad number. You're taking a bad opportunity. So people who are telling you play the whip snakes, well, they might as well just be selling you snake oil because they didn't do their homework and be giving you the best number possible. So what people are going to tell you whip snakes is the bet. It likely is, but not at this number, Jeff, when you could have got it at 100, a full dollar cheaper if you were actually doing your due diligence.
Well, again, that's why you're the expert, and that's what I love. You do the same thing I do. We're numbers guys, and when you see an advantage, you take an advantage. And when you miss the best number, like if you were
You pass.
You pass. Exactly.
Yeah, you don't take bad numbers. If you take bad numbers consistently, Jeff, that's how you go broke betting sports. You practice good bankroll management. You practice good axioms, and you learn just because a game's on, just because you want action doesn't mean you need action. You know what I mean? And if you do, then put a little like 2-team parlay together for pizza money. You know what I mean? Like if you really need that, that's the way to attack it. So I'm right there with you, Jeff. And it's something that I learned from, paying attention to your guys' VIP clients, paying attention to what you do on a daily basis, like passing. Some of the best bets that you might make are the ones you don't make at all. So I think that's something that people in this space really need to get their head wrapped around, is that you don't have to have a play on every game. And if you do have a play on every game, you're going to go broke in a year.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Sunday, we already covered the Chrome and Archers at 1:00. Water Dogs and Cannons money line. Water Dogs minus 145. The Cannons plus 115. Goal line. Right now, you can get the Cannons plus the 1.5 minus 125. Or if you think the Water Dogs are going to win by 2 or more, you can get them minus a goal and a half, minus 105. An under over again at 24.5, juiced over minus 125.
Yeah, I think this game is a coin flip game. I think it's going to be a really competitive game because it's two teams. The thing is that the Water Dogs last year ended up, because of the surge that they had at the end of the year, they were actually the number 1 seed going into the playoffs after kind of skating through the year. So this was a team, it's funny, they're the Water Dogs. They found themselves as underdogs very often because public sentiment wasn't really all that great on them. For some reason, I don't know if it's because, it's Barstool personalities who own this team. I don't know if it's just because they were the 1 seed last year. I think they have good players, solid players, but their goalie, Dylan Ward, he won't be playing this weekend. He's the netminder for the Colorado Mammoths, so he'll be playing in the NLL Cup. They'll have a backup goaltender in this game. I wouldn't bet this game either way. I don't think I would mess around with the total. What I would do is hit your little player props tab if you have DraftKings and look at some of the player props in this game, because Lyle Thompson, it's a little bit juiced up. I was able to get it at minus 120. His over 3.5 total points. If the Cannons win this game, it's because Lyle Thompson's going to be going off. I mean, he is the engine that makes that train run. He's from the Onondaga Nation. He's one of the best players that the world has ever seen. He routinely hits over these numbers in his sleep. And I think that this could be a high scoring game just because, backup goaltender, so maybe I lean towards that over 24.5, but rather than needing scoring from both teams, I would rather just hit some of these player props. The other one that I like, I just think it's a little low. Is this Mikey Slosher over points, over 1.5. It's actually plus 105 on the take back. He was a sneaky reason of why the Water Dogs were able to surge at the end of the year. He wasn't really much of one of their main guys at the beginning of the year, but as he took on more of a scoring role, more of a facilitating role, that's when the Water Dogs kind of took that next step. So I think maybe the market doesn't realize how important he was to that success. So I think this 1.5 is a low number. We get a goal, we get an assist, we're already over it. We could, what could really happen is on the opening face-off of this game, we have a pinch and pop, outlet goes to the wing, Mikey Schlosser picks it up, throws it on down to Michael Sowers on attack. Michael Sowers slams dunks, and then you already have 1 assist 2 minutes into the game. So I think, the best bet out of this game is probably that Mikey Schlosser over. But if it's a competitive game, I think that Lyle Thompson over. It's a little bit juicy, but I think, as long as it doesn't get over 150, I'd be comfortable laying the minus 140 and taking the over with Lyle, even though I did get a better number than that.
Lyle was very, very good to us last year.
Yes. Unfortunately, he didn't win that MVP ticket that we had, but he at least made it interesting. Jeff.
Before I let you go, let me see if I can pull it up. Okay. I have the team futures. And so throughout the year, as we did last year, and as obviously we do at ECSI here, the market allows you, as teams start slow, obviously to get better numbers. As teams get way out ahead where they were supposed to be, you're going to get worse numbers. I'm going to throw out, the numbers here, and for the viewers and listeners, maybe an initial pre-flop favorite that you think's going to win, and then maybe a pre-flop you think you're getting too big of a number that's worth to hold on to.
Yeah, so the big thing is you have to shop around in these future markets. As long as there's more books offering these, there's a major difference of opinion, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at MGM right now. I know you have DraftKings up. So the odds-on favorite on DraftKings, I believe, is Chaos, correct? Chaos and Atlas?
Chaos plus 450, Atlas plus 450, Archers plus 500, Whip Snakes plus 500, Redwoods 550, Water Dogs 600, then the Cannons and the Chromes at 1,000.
So you see, in that market, in DraftKings market, they're viewing the Water Dogs kind of similar as I am. They're the third longest odds. You go to BetMGM, the Water Dogs are the odds-on favorite. They're plus 400. So you're getting 200 different of a split there on your future odds. So this future market is throwing a dart at a dartboard while you have a blindfold over your eye. It is really, the way that they're making these numbers. To have that, I mean, you always have a differing, maybe 50 here, maybe 50 there. But Jeff, I mean, you study future markets. I mean, maybe the only one that's similar to this is like a WNBA future market. Like having that wide of a difference, a team that's the third longest odds in one market is the odds-on favorite at a number. I mean, that's pretty surprising, no? Just from like a macro kind of perspective.
100% correct.
So that's why my one guy who's like our number crunchers with Pro Lacrosse Talk, his name is Brian Andrews. He's a great follow on Twitter. He'll any question that you have for him in lacrosse, he'll beep boop bop. He's like a robot with this stuff. He actually drew up a spreadsheet using 4 different books: BetMGM, DraftKings, Barstool Sportsbook, and Caesar Sportsbook. So if you were able to get down on all 4 of those, and then the other one that he roped in, if you have friends north of the border, he had Cool Bet Canada. He drew up a sports or a spreadsheet in which you could place a future on every single team across these different markets and lock in at least $100 profit. Now, I wouldn't do it because of how much money you would have to expend, but how amazing would it be as a sports bettor to say, holy shit, I beat a futures market. Like I just locked in a profit without a game being played. So if you're not going to put down thousands and middle 100 different markets, I think there are some teams that are worth a sprinkle here. If you only have DraftKings, I think taking plus 550 with the Redwoods, you heard I'm big on the Redwoods. This is also a team that I've said on several different shows. I've said on my new show alone, Over and Back. You can find it on PLL's their YouTube page. We'll have a different guest on every week. We'll talk the lines, we'll talk reaction, we'll talk all that great stuff. Super proud of that product and looking forward to continuing that. Over and Back. You can find it also. Follow me at Newbie Talks. But I love this Redwoods team. I describe them as always a bridesmaid, never a bride. They've been in championship situations. They've choked a little bit in the playoffs, but every time you have that, it adds a little bit more motivation. And these guys have veterans. They have a guy in Rob Pennell on attack who is coming into this year with a major chip on his shoulder, had a lot of chirps coming his way last year. They have Miles Jones, who, excuse the language, Jeff, is a brick shit house. He will just mow people down. He can rip 2-point shots. They have Sergio Perkovic, who's one of the best 2-point shooters. So I think putting them at 550, that's worth a little bit of sprinkle. You're getting good odds. If you have friends north of the border who are able to get down on Cool Bet, they're a juicy plus 800 to win the title. So talk about some differences in markets. The other one that I would look at This Atlas team, you have BetMGM, they're plus 550. They're odds on favorites at DraftKings. So you shop around, you can potentially get a better number there. Like I said, I don't know if they'll be great coming out of the gate, but I think they're a team that is only going to get better. So I would be surprised if the season went on that we're going to get a better number on Atlas than plus 550. So I think that would be a good way to attack it. And then last but not least, in an 8-team market, always take the longest odds because you never know. Last year, there was a point when Chaos was all the way up to plus 1,400. They end up winning. So with the way that this season goes, the rigmaroles, the fact that 7 of the 8 teams make the playoffs, take the longest odds that are on the board, sprinkle a couple shekels on it because it's well worth it. When this market first opened, I got the Chrome at plus 2,000. So that's come down significantly. You can still get them shopping around at plus 1,400. I think they're worth it at plus, the 10-1 that they're at right now. So I think in an 8-team market, just math wise, Jeff, you take the longest odds because there's a decent enough chance that come playoff time, that'll be a live ticket that you potentially have an opportunity to hedge out of, whether it's in the first round, the second round, whether it's in the championship. Take those longest odds, bird in the hand worth 2 in the bush. And if that does get home, you have the screenshot that you get to brag about on Twitter and say, I told everybody. That's the way that I attack it personally.
Lastly, do we just auto bet your man Jeff Teat at plus 400 or Lyle Thompson at plus 450 and call it a day? I mean, I know as we go, I told you we're going 15, 16 straight weeks. We're going to meet in Boston for the All-Star game. I mean, it's the Jeff Teat show. I learned that last year, of course, and Lyle Thompson. Now they are household names in the Dawson household. Okay? Do we just auto bet them now, or is there something else down there that you just want to get that beer and pizza money on as well?
I'll tell you what, if you think I got some nice lettuce rocking here, Jeff Teat and especially Lyle Thompson, man, they put me to shame. I mean, you see when Lyle Thompson's dodging, he's got that ponytail whipping out of the back. That's one of the coolest looks in all of sports is just, Lyle Thompson just, when he runs, it's almost like he's ice skating on grass. He's just like a gazelle. So, at plus 450, maybe worth it, plus 400. The only thing that concerns me a little bit, Jeff, is again, going back to being a numbers guy, right? I just don't know if the implied odds of Jeff Teat being a 4-1 favorite says that he has a 20% chance of winning the title this year. And I just think, with what we've learned about the PLL, the fact that last year it was a goaltender who won, this isn't the NFL markets where you better be placing on a quarterback or you might as well just Venmo me and Jeff the money. We'll burn it for you because anybody can win this. I wouldn't be shocked if a midi ends up winning this. So I always worry about MVP markets because they're so narrative driven. Look at what happened with the NBA MVP this year. It was up and down. There was a point in the season when Steph Curry was the odds on favorite. So I think the better way to attack it rather than taking some of those top guys is just get a little bit more bang for your buck. And I think a way to do that, it's a look that was given out on Over and Back from my guest, and it's one that I completely agree with. It's Michael Sowers. He's 25-1 plus 2,500. He's an attackman for the Water Dogs. The reason why I like this play is not only because you're getting an insane, nice number. If you put, $10 on that, that's $260 in take back. So, it's a really nice number that you're getting here on Michael Sowers, but as I was mentioning, it's about narratives. The first game of the year last year, Michael Sowers, who was touted as maybe potentially one of the best attackmen coming out of the draft last year, he gets hit up high. He ends up getting injured, doesn't play the entire season. So the Water Dogs were good even without Sowers. They got that first pick without Sowers. They were the first overall in the playoffs without him. Now you add him into a team who, according to BetMGM, is the odds-on favorite to win. You're getting a guy who already has a built-in narrative for a comeback player of the year angle, and he's an amazing scorer, and he's going to be pissed off. He's going to be playing like he's angry because of the fact that he got knocked out early in the year last year. So I think there's some serious value. I think Michael Sowers is a live ticket for MVP. And again, you talk about trying to get a better price. This market figures to be open the entire year. I don't think we'll see a better price on Michael Sowers, especially if the Water Dogs come out, they win week 1. He has, 2 goals and an assist or something like that. That odds by the end of this weekend, you could already be looking at a ticket that's like 18-1. So hop in on the 25-1 now, grab Michael Sowers. That was the look that Evan Malloy gave. I completely co-sign that. I love that play. Michael Sowers 25-1 for MVP is the ticket that I'm probably going to be having.
A lot of action, a lot of stuff to take in. Spot on, only open in week. We got 15, 16 more weeks to go. The scroller, let me just actually, and this was my bad here. Wow, this was a sleep on my part, so I apologize here. I thought I hit it. I hit the one below.
Hey, it's Friday, Jeff. It's lacrosse time. We're not thinking about tickers. We're thinking about how the hell did we end up with 10 different tickets in week 1? That's what we're thinking about.
Hey, and we like to say here, listen, if you need the action, sprinkle some beer and pizza on these. We're not asking anyone to go out, overextend on their skis. You always say, stay in your lanes. And I think the best point that you brought up, and a lot of the sharps and experts, like let's say in the NFL, they take it slow and easy the first couple of weeks. They get a feel for exactly what's going on. I like that Vegas always gives the public and the degens the first couple of weeks, the favorites coming in, the overs coming in, build up their bankroll, get them more excited, and they just hope that they make it to Thanksgiving, and they never do.
Yeah, you're not kidding. So I completely co-sign that. Is really, learn these first couple weeks, especially if you're going to be new to the sport. And I hope that you are. I hope you do check out these games. I mean, Jeff, he fell in love with it. Up north, he always had, some lacrosse going through his veins a bit because it's a decent hotbed up there. But I mean, Jeff, just from a sports perspective, this product the PLL is putting out is pretty damn good, especially in the doldrums of the year. If you're not a baseball guy, you're looking for something that maybe has a little bit higher pace. Hockey season's rolling to an end. If you can stomach the USFL, credit to you. I can't. Dear God, is that rough to watch? So if you're looking for something that has a little bit more of an edge, it's fast paced, it's fun, and you can get it on the ground floor. I really highly suggest checking out the PLL. I don't just say it because, it's something that I help butter my bread with. I think it's a great product. And, Jeff, you can kind of speak to that. Is these games are competitive. They're fun. They're fast paced. The personalities in the league, you start falling in love with a Lyle Thompson, a Matt Rambo, and the access that the PLL gives you to these players is second to none. Great transparency. So I highly suggest, follow PLL, the Premier Lacrosse, on Twitter. Follow me too. I'm always sharing things, interacting. Follow PLL Bet so you never miss any of the over and back shows. Follow me, Bet on Lacrosse. It's a great time to get in. And we're going to the moon with lacrosse, and it all starts here on ECSI with what Jeff and I are doing. So make sure you're watching every week. But make sure you check out the games too. If you have ESPN Plus, you get all 67 of the games all year long, and also some of them will be nationally televised as well.
Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks, at Bet on Lacrosse, at Cash Consideration Show, at Wager Talk, at 8:30 a.m. WEEU. Always a pleasure. I can't wait for this weekend. I can't wait to cash some tickets. And
baby.
And next Friday at 2:30, we will recap how many tickets we cashed, which will be a bunch, and we will get everyone ready for week 2. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one and only Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks, we wish everyone a great weekend. Turn on some Premier Lacrosse. I'm telling you, you will not, it's not the USFL, like he said. This is fun. This is up and down. This is something that it will grow on you. Hey, listen, it grew on me. I am 100% honest with you. I reached out last year and I says, hey, no one's doing it but you guys. Let ECSI see if we can start to get some fannies in the seats and some eyes in the sky. And it's worked. People were asking me, when you bringing Dan back? When you guys start? No.
We're back, baby.
We're back. So everyone, have a blast. Cash some tickets. Myself and Dan will be back next week on Friday at 2:30. And at 6 o'clock tonight, myself, Scott Webb, and the closing bell. We will see you soon.